Welcome to Competitive CX, the podcast for financial services professionals tackling client experience challenges. If you're passionate about enhancing client experience and driving client satisfaction, you found your new favorite show.
I'm Adam Grainger, and alongside Melanie Aimer and Hamish Taylor, we delve into essential CX strategies and innovations that are shaping the future of client experience in finance.
With our diverse backgrounds in customer experience and financial services, we're going to bring you some real-world insights and thought-provoking discussions to help you navigate the complexities of delivering exceptional client experiences.
Whether you're a decision maker, a marketer, or anyone in a client-facing role in financial services, you'll find valuable takeaways to elevate your organizational CX strategies.
So come on then, subscribe now and join us in transforming client experience and gaining that competitive edge.
Let's dive in. Good morning, afternoon, or evening to wherever you are. Welcome to our podcast series called Competitive CX. This is our very first episode, and we'll be discussing today why care about CX. We'll be tackling the challenges of client experience across all parts of financial services. My name is Melanie Aimer, and for the last 20 years, I've been championing the role of client experience within the different areas of financial services, from capital markets, asset management, private banking, and wealth management. And frankly speaking, I'm just simply not satisfied with the way that financial services is cracking the challenges of creating great client experiences. Now, I'm very excited because to join me in this quest for new approaches, I'll be joined by two very experienced innovators already making a huge impact in the financial services industry. So firstly, Hamish Taylor, welcome.
Hi.
So Hamish is an award-winning former CEO whose world-leading customer-led transformation approach has inspired hundreds of companies across 48 countries to rethink their customer approach. He's also been dubbed the Master Thief for his track record of transferring ideas from one sector to another. I'm also joined by Adam Grainger. Welcome, Adam.
Hi, everyone.
Now, he's got an organization called Accomplish, who's pioneered the measurement and understanding of the key drivers of a great client experience and enabled asset management organizations to pinpoint where their CX either out or underperformed. And I'll be asking him to bring that thinking into the wider financial services community. Today, we're going to tackle the challenges of client experience in financial services, and we're going to cover the topic, why financial services should care about CX. Now, you might be asking, what are we going to be covering in the future in our future episodes? So you can come back and join us in future episodes. We're going to be covering topics like, is the financial regulator a friend or a foe to CX? And if technology is enabler or disabler. And our next episode is going to be about client experience, who should own it? What is CX? We, of course, would welcome your views and thoughts. And to do this, please either reach out to us directly or leave us a comment. And if you are listening, we'd like to ask you a little favor. And our favor of you is to rate and review this episode. We really do hope you enjoy the podcast series. And now on to our first topic. Why care about client experience in the financial services industry? Hamish, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, but delighted to. So why care about client experience? Look, Melanie, as you know, I've seen this across a number of different industries. And as part of that, for my sins, I've had to sit on various boards and also risk committees. And the thing about risk committees is they all have their own processes, all these grids of red, amber, and green. And then they look at all these risks like IT risk and regulatory risk and exchange rate risk and everything else. But you know what? The one risk that is almost always missing is the biggest risk of all for businesses in any industry. And that's customer risk. If you've got no customers, you've got no business. So it doesn't matter how good your IT systems are. So for me, customer risk should be top of the list of anybody looking at the risks to their business. Now, that's a kind of a bit of a negative way of looking at it. Let's get rid of the negative. It's a risk. But if you really want to care about CX, then it's got to be a positive thing. And that to me is when you look at it more as the key to success for a business. And look, my career's taken me from customer-led organizations like Procter & Gamble and British Airways, well, in the days when I was there, yes, to product-led organizations like Eurostar or Sainsbury's Bank, where they had brilliant state-of-the-art products, but weren't necessarily achieving their targets. And the turnarounds came from recognizing that the client experience or customer experience in their case is the key to the competitive advantages that they needed to achieve. So, do you need great products? Yes, of course, but it's not enough. And in financial services, we need to recognize, I believe, that customer expectations are driven by what they see elsewhere in their lives. Look at the great brands they come across. And success isn't driven by the products, it's driven by the customer experience. So, look, even if you go to an area like, Procter and Gamble household cleaners, where I used to work, you'd think the product cleaning ability was the key to success with customers. But actually, there was a huge correlation, not just with the product quality, but with ease of access, the distribution, how many stores you sold in, ease of use, packaging innovations like the ability to dispense it properly. In other words, the customer experience. I told you, by the way, I'd get in a toilet cleaner story at some point today. That's your allocation for today.
Wouldn't be the same without it.
Absolutely. But look, let's go beyond consumer goods a bit. And, when you go into the world of service businesses, like financial services, the customer experience or client experience becomes even a greater source of competitive advantage, not least of which because people are now part of your offering, of course. And I kind of tend to look at the kind of competitive advantage coming through three areas. Yes, the product, of course, and that's the product, Procter and Gamble, this soap powder will wash your shirt whiter than that soap powder. Yes, fine. But it's the powder that's doing it. But look at great brands that have developed since then. And it's as much about the customer experience. Starbucks. Is Starbucks a great brand and a big brand because of the taste of its coffee compared with other coffees? No. Of course it has to have good coffee. But really, what great Starbucks grow was being on every street corner, Wi-Fi access, comfortable seats, personalization, all parts of the experience. Apple, computers, as product focused as you would think you could get with something like computers, But Apple didn't build its business because it had more gigabytes of processing speed than anybody else. Apple, it was about ease of use. It was about looking good. It was about interconnectivity of things. Another example, Uber. Look at Uber. Uber, what is Uber? It's a taxi. Guess what? There's lots of taxis out there. And black cabs in London, for example, would always say they're superior because they've got the knowledge. But SatNav has taken away that advantage. And therefore, the advantage that Uber brought in was being more easy to access. And by just having an app that enabled people to call a taxi more easily, they started taking a competitive advantage from people whose actual tactile knowledge as drivers was better than theirs. And then if you really want to go to town at the top of the thing, you get into customer feelings as a way of driving the customer experience. And
We don't like feelings in financial services, Hamish.
I'll come to, I think we'll have a few discussions about feelings in customer experience in financial services as we go. But you would look at a real master at that. You look at someone like Disney, and everything in the Disney world is about magical surprises. Let's create magical surprises, And yeah, in financial services, yes, there are a few feelings. What we want is the positive ones and build on those. So look, I think that's where the competitive world is today. Look, it's not good enough to be better than the other financial services brands. The customer's benchmark is everywhere else that they see a great client experience. And therefore, we need to ask ourselves, what are the new entrants bringing to financial services? What are they bringing to the game that we don't know? Are they bringing better products? I doubt that. The legacy providers, the big banks out there, they've got great products and great experience. So what are they bringing? They're bringing better communication and awareness. They're making it easier to access their products. They're nicer to deal with than you. So that's where we need to concentrate. And in today's world, the learning from other industries is that competitive advantage is driven by customer experience. And if you can't find ways to meet the ever-increasing expectations that are out there and really show that you care about the client experience, you will fail, no doubt about it. And there, my lad, I conclude the case for the prosecution.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Hamish. I love the examples coming from other industries as well. Adam, your thoughts?
Well, lots of thoughts, but I want to build off some of the things that Hamish has just said. And I agree, Hamish, very powerful. Key things that stood out for me from what you said there is client experience CX is a source of competitive advantage. My words, not yours, but I love the point where you were saying, clients are already experts in CX and they're able to recognize, good CX and not good CX. And I would love to hear some of the board discussions that you've had around client risk. You're on a different episode. From my perspective, why I care about CX, I think I'd like to make 3 points. The first is that having a CX is just not a choice. No matter what industry you're in, if your company has clients, then it will be giving them an experience. So while the three of us are sitting here now, and while other people are listening, our firms are delivering experiences to clients. So why care about that? Well, think about it. If your CX underperforms at engaging your clients, they will be giving their time, but that time will go to your competitors. And then guess what? That's where their money will go to. So having a CX is not a choice. Second, as Hamish mentioned, and Melanie as well, I run a CX benchmarking firm, and we see this in the numbers. Specifically, we look at measures that are best described as gifts of time and transfers of money. And the less time clients give to your pre-sale experience, on average, the lower your sales conversion. And the difference can be as much as half. So underperformers may convert, let's say, 20% of the pitches that they give, while the average, not the outperformers, the average convert 40%. That's half or double, depending on whether you're looking up or looking down. We also see this in the post-sale experience. And guess what? The firms that meet with clients that time again, let's say they meet less frequently, they have the lowest relationship depth, with maybe only a product per client ratio of 1.4. Yet the average firm meets about twice as frequently as that. They're putting time, they're putting shoe leather into relationships. They have a product per client ratio of maybe 1.8 or even 2.1 products per client. Now let's move this from just small fractions and numbers and things like that. That's a 50% increase in relationship depth. In revenue terms, if you apply that across the whole of your book of business, the impact in hard pounds, dollars, euros can be enormous. How are they achieving this? It's that shoe leather. It's because they're giving not just minimum service, and then just allowing themselves to be forgotten. They're caring about the client experience. They're giving their time to actually to deepen those relationships. So as a business person, therefore, I would turn the question back and I would say, how can you justify not caring about increasing your your relationship depth by 50%? What have you got to care about that is more important than your client's time and money? So thirdly, to finish, and then I promise I'll come up for air, if you operate in an oversupplied market, for example, the market that I serve, too many fund managers chasing too few clients, your first task is to stand out from the crowd. But it's hard to stand out. Hamish spoke a lot about product. When your product is one of 100 products and they all look very samey, you've actually just lost a previously reliable way of differentiating your company. Similarly, when we think about oversupplying a market with product, what happens? Price drops. We've seen that across the global asset management industry. So, in a quick sort of, what did that take me, 30 seconds to say that? The average asset manager in recent decades, as a result of that long-term trend, has switched from being a price maker to being a price taker. Had lost two previously reliable strategic differentiators. Now, there's another one, which is brand, but in finance, it's risky to use brand too heavily in terms of an over-reliance because of the ever-present risk of contagion. At this point, you really only have one strategic differentiator left, and that's how you leave clients thinking, feeling, and acting. That's client experience. It's measurable, it's tangible, it's dollarizable, it's commercially actionable. It's incremental. You don't have to go from zero to hero in one move. You just need to start, and your clients will, as Hamish was alluding to, they will notice. Crucially, the point I want to leave everyone with is it is entirely under your control, and your clients know that. So if you operate in an oversupplied market, CX is the reliable differentiator, and that makes not caring about it an unforced error.
No, well said, Adam. I mean, I think one of the things I find interesting about this business about product and people relying on product to be the differentiator is I'm not an expert as the product, as a customer. Everybody comes in and tells me they got the best product. I don't know the difference between them. So unless you want me to buy on price, you better add something on top of the product that I'm actually going to react to a competitive advantage. And as you rightly say, it's got to be the experience.
It has to be. And I think when I think about it as a practitioner being across these different parts of financial services, I think, if I may reflect, I would say, yes, financial services should care about CX, but actually in my mind, it's why they should care about it now than any other time before. Now, in my experience, it's really understood CX, but they struggle to really make a material and structural shift in practice for, in the same way that they might manage, as you said, Hamish, managing risk or meeting their financial targets. And so In my mind, CX is not, is can be and has been seen as a nice to have. It's not seen as a fire that has to be addressed.
Yeah,
And as
yeah.
you say, Adam, it really does have that hard dollar material impact on the financial targets. And so we need to start to connect these things better, right?
But I think you're coming out the material and structural shift is a really important one as well,
Yeah.
because certainly in trying to do it in other industries, you realize that nobody's ever going to say, I don't care about the customer. They just aren't actually doing it. And it's helping the organization to move with you on the journey. It's important. And I know it's something we'll talk about later on in
Well,
another episode.
and I think in financial services, there's been an awful lot of waffle said. There's been a lot of soft and fluffy definition of client experience, and that has done client experience practitioners no help whatsoever. In fact, it's made them just look soft and fluffy. And why would you're not going to get any budget for that. You're going to be the first people to get laid off. You can't if you've got all sort of nice qualitative, subjective definitions of this topic, which is what we're going to look at in the next episode, then you can't pull together a scorecard, you can't pull together a dashboard, you can't justify your existence, you can't explain to your colleagues why this time and money from clients is so important.
And I think that the real test in the day to day is if you go and look at this financial services boards and executive agendas, and you actually go and look at the meeting agendas, and you say, right, what are they looking at? They're looking at financial targets, they're looking at risk, they're looking at HR people, and all of those things. The question is, are they also bringing CX as a standing agenda item? Going back to Hamish, your point on the client risk, right? And if they're not, then they're not taking it as seriously as they ought to. My argument in terms of why now more than any time before is threefold. I think one first is clients' expectations are changing at a rapid pace like never before. And I've seen this in the investment, the private, and the wealth sector, where there's a significant shift to the next generation
Yeah.
and to women, right? And we're seeing that expectations and behaviors of women and the next generation are vastly different to the way it might have been in the past in terms of how they invest with purpose, they create impact and do good. Okay, we're generalizing, but these are the trends we see. So the needs and expectations of this new clientele is vastly different to what we've seen in previous clientele of the organizations.
If you're a youngster today, you're used to everything happening instantly, aren't you? I mean, you've got everything at your fingertips. You've grown up in a world where everything you can get when you need it very quickly. So I think you're absolutely right. The next generation have a totally different mindset.
Yeah, and to invent a word, so much is ditchable these days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's an app that can help you leave that provider and enter them straight away. Well, they'll do it.
totally.
Yeah. So I think we're finally agreeing with your first point there, Melanie.
Oh, absolutely. And that actually leads me nicely into the second reason why I think they should care about it now more than anyone else is because they're under threat by competitive entrants, right? And those new competitive entrants are not just those in the financial services industry. They're coming outside of the financial services industry because exactly as you both just said, they're comparing their experience in financial services to their own experiences they're having elsewhere in their day to day, whether it's in their corporate life or whether it's their home life. And so I think there's really an impact on client experience can have on that bottom line, reducing the client friction that exists, but also centering all of our decisions around a client needs. And then thirdly, I would say in the world of artificial intelligence and fast advancing tech, experience and how you feel is going to be even more meaningful, especially as we think about client experience and planning it so it's intentional, it's consistent, it's differentiated, and is valuable to them. And AI and tech is not going to be able to do all of that. It's probably going to make it consistent, but it's going to need to bring all of that EQ and all of the people together to be able to look at bringing forward the client experience for our clients. So, in summary, we're in the age of experience, and I think the needs and expectations of customers and our clients are changing rapidly. So I strongly believe that the thing that will create value in the long term is when financial services organizations can really truly outbehave the competition, but also outbehave how other industries are behaving as well, right? And create new client experiences and maybe even new services and new things that we may have never have thought of before. So those are my thoughts. I don't know if you have, Hamish, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, no, I'm very pleased you ended up talking about feelings again, because I do believe that's a way the world has changed hugely. I mean, like, look, even in all sorts of fields. I mean, Did we ever talk about mental health 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20, in the way that we do now? How you feel and what you're thinking is becoming more and more important. And therefore, we've got to build around that when we're designing customer experience. Melanie, you and I worked before together when we thought about that. How do you create a customer experience by using the feelings, as the output that you're actually aiming towards with your design of your experience? And I think that's a really critical one there. Well, how do you want your customer to feel should determine what you do. That's
And
part of
how
it.
that then drives, Hamish, sorry to interrupt, but
Yes.
that's how you drive into the bottom line. Because
Yeah.
if they feel different, then they become
Of course
more
they do.
loyal, and you start to see greater benefits
You
in the
go to
future as
people you
well. It's
like.
not
Of
just all
course you
fluff,
do. We know
right?
that.
And you
Yeah.
can turn it into the negative. You can pick up your point, which I really like around client risk, which is if you make them feel frustrated, if you
Guess
make
what?
them feel like that you waste their
Not
time,
coming back.
guess what? That's when they're gonna ditch you because you push them
Absolutely.
over the edge.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, I think the other thing that, to pick up on what you said, Manny, is that the other thing we forget the way the world has changed is not only are the young generation and women and other people, coming in with different expectations, but also the world has changed in terms of how we communicate. If I go back to my P&G days in the 1980s, we always told the customer what to think because the only way of communicating was that way. It was we put an advert on the television and said, hey, we've got the best products. With what's going on with social media and TripAdvisor and all these kind of feedback mechanisms now, the customer tells you in no uncertain terms what they think, and you can hear what other customers think. Previously, in P&G days, did one customer know what other customers thought about Fairy Liquid, for example? No, but we did because it was in a market research file in our cupboard. Now that market research file is in the public domain and everybody's telling you what they think. So if you don't get it
Yeah.
right for your customers, they're going to tell everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. That goes back, Adam, to your point about the brand contagion as well. And that's important. Any last reflections from you, Adam?
Just one little thing I would add in. We touched on AI, and we've been doing some work on a white paper recently as part of a collaboration. And interestingly, we're starting to see that the effect of AI is making client experience much more scalable at higher volume. Previously, the white glove service, yes sir, no sir, how may I help you? That was not scalable. So a lot of firms might only offer that to their top tier clients, because they just couldn't charge the fees that they needed to afford that. But, with personalization tools, with all manner of agents that you can now use and employ, you can achieve a lot of that with a human in the loop at much higher volume. So we have this theory that AI may make CX more scalable at higher volume.
So there's no excuse, Adam, is what you're saying, to make sure that you care about the CX, i.e.,
There wasn't before, but you don't guess the one now.
exactly, exactly. Hamish, any last thoughts from you?
No, I've probably stolen enough of the airtime on this one, I suspect. But yeah, no, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think Adam summed up. It's just not negotiable.
No. Yeah,
You don't have a choice about whether to care about it or not. It is your business. So if you're
that's
not
right.
caring about it, you won't be in business for much longer.
No, well, that's a good way to end, Hamish.
Mhm.
That's a good point. So, look, I just want to say thank you to all our listeners for joining us. We do hope you have found this discussion useful and you'll join us in future episodes. We'd like to hear from you. So, like I said, if you have any subjects you would like us to debate or discuss, we really do welcome them. And as I said, please share with us directly any comments in the comment section. And if you like this episode, please can you share it now with a colleague or a friend, especially for those that you'll think that this will be useful for what they do in their day to day. So please share it now with a colleague or a friend, and then they can also join us for future episodes. And that brings me up to what is it going to be our next episode, our competitive CX. So the title is What is CX and Who Should Own It? And that can be quite controversial. So I'm really looking forward to that second episode. So look, don't miss out. And I really wish you all a good day. And I really hope you can all go out and create a competitive CX. So cheers, everyone. Have a lovely day. Thanks for listening to this episode of Competitive CX, the podcast dedicated to insights for financial services professionals tackling client experience challenges. We hope you found valuable strategies for enhancing client engagement in your organization.
If you enjoyed the discussion, please subscribe to Competitive CX and leave a rating and a review. Your feedback helps us reach more finance professionals seeking to overcome their CX challenges.
And you can stay up to date with the latest in client experience by following us on LinkedIn for resources designed to help you innovate and improve financial services.
Join us next time as we continue exploring how to transform client experiences in finance. Until then, keep pushing boundaries and striving for excellence in the client experience.